key attributes of exponential functions. So this is what we're going to look for on the graph. So one of the things we're going to need to look for is the y-intercept. Remember, this is where it crosses the y-axis. So if we have our grid and then we have our exponential function graphed, the y-intercept will be where it crosses the y-axis. The asymptote is always the same thing for Algebra 1. Always, always, it's y equals 0. So in Algebra 1, the asymptote is always, always, always y equals 0. The asymptote is an invisible line that the graph will never touch. So it'll get really, really, really close, but it will never touch. So that line, y equals 0, is the x-axis. So if we're looking at an equation, it's always this x-axis. It gets really, really, really close, but it never touches right here down the x-axis. If the graph is going the other way, so if it's a decay graph, it'll get really, really, really close over here, but it will never touch that line, y equals 0. So let's look at the first problem. The graph of an exponential function is shown on the grid. Which dashed line is an asymptote for the graph? Now remember, we said it's always y equals 0. So if we go to where y equals 0, that's here, that dashed line is line S. That's our answer. Which statement about this graph is true? So whenever we have an equation in Algebra 1 and you're not sure what to do, go into the graph of your calculator and graph that equation. So whenever you graph it, this is how it will look. On your calculator, it will look like this. So the first one says the graph has a vertical asymptote. So remember, we said the asymptote is always y equals 0. That is horizontal, so A cannot be true. B says the graph crosses the y-axis at 0, 2/9. So that's this point here. Whenever you go in and look at the table, so if you press Control T, that point is actually 0, 1/3. So B cannot be true. Letter C says the graph has an asymptote at y equals 1/3. Remember, we said in Algebra 1 it's always y equals 0. And then letter D says the graph decreases, which it is, it's going down from left to right. That is our answer. Okay, next problem. The starting annual salary for an office worker at a company is $29,000. So this is the starting. That means that's going to be our y-intercept. Where does the graph begin? It increases at a rate of 6.2%. Which graph models the situation after he receives X annual increases? So first of all, we know our graph needs to start at 29,000. Letter C starts at 5,000. That cannot be right. Letter D also starts at 5.9. That cannot, at 5,000. That cannot be right. So if we go in and we look for an increase of 6.2%, we can also graph this equation. So we know that our equation for an exponential function, we would do the starting amount, and then we would do 1 plus, since it's an increase, 0.062% written as a decimal to the x power. So you can graph that and actually see which one would make more sense. Once you graph your equation, you'll see that that is a more gradual increase. Don't forget to zoom out so that you can see it. 29,000 is a large number. And it will be a more gradual increase, which is letter A. The number of coffee stores opened by a coffee company can be modeled by the exponential function graphed on the grid, where X is the number of years since 1992. So 0 would represent 1992. So it says, based on the graph, which statement does not appear to be true? The coffee company had opened 400 stores by the end of 1992. So 1992, 400, that's correct. The coffee company opened 100 stores in 1 year. So from 0 to 1, it looks like we are just in between 4 and 600, which is about 500. So that would be an additional 100 from the first year. So letter G appears to be true. 100 stores in 1 year. Letter H, every year the number of stores the coffee company opened increased by 25%. So increased by 25%. So if we take our original amount, 400, and we add the 25%, that's 0.25, we can see what does that number come out to, which is 500. That's the amount we got, so that answer appears to also be true. Letter D, since 1992, the coffee company has opened 250 stores each year. Whenever we see the word each, that means times X. So this would be, the equation for this would be 400 plus 250 X. That would be a straight line. Anytime something increases by the same amount each year, that is a constant rate of change, which gives you a linear graph, and we have an exponential graph. So this answer is the one that we are looking for that is not true.